Okay, let's go ahead and jump into the article, and I will share with you the second resource later because I think it will apply to this article. Okay, once again, the article is called Uncommitted Christians Causing Catastrophic Decline in Biblical Worldview in America, according to Barna. This is an article by Leonardo Blair, senior features reporter. Millions of uncommitted Christians are causing catastrophic decline in biblical worldview in America because they have been poorly discipled in their faith and often don't know how to pass on biblical values to their children. Research in a new book from veteran Christian researcher George Barna shows. So let me jump in here and say that, when I read an article like this, especially about a book, one of the goals of the article is to sell the book. So I'm fully aware that as I'm reading this is also kind of a pitch to say, I need to know more. I want to find out more. And you may want to find out more. And if you want, I'll put a link down to the book so you can get it for yourselves. And I've been following Barna for quite some time, watching his research and all the work that he does to help inform the church so the church can do their mission better. All that to say, I have no bias either way. I'm intrigued by the title, and I'm intrigued by the effect it will have on churches and youth ministry going forward. Are churches going to ramp up to say we need to do a better job in youth ministry and we need to do a better job of biblically equipping our students? Will churches up their youth ministry budgets because they say, well, we have to reach more students and we have to bring more students into the church so they can be taught what a biblical worldview is? Because there are pastors who are going to read this book and then will have to make decisions based on the information they're receiving. But listen, youth worker, this is also for you, because now that you're hearing it from me or you've read it for yourself there in the Christian Post, you can take that information and bring it to your pastor and say, Pastor, here's where Barna says we're missing some things. And maybe you can then say, hey, based on this, should we think about upping the youth ministry budget? Should we talk about a stylistic difference of the way we do youth ministry? Should we do more retreats based around biblical worldview? And there's probably a dozen other things you can think of to write down and say, maybe I need to bring this up at the next board meeting or staff meeting and see what people are thinking about that, as well as using the information that's in this article to bolster your youth ministry programming in a direction that's going to help facilitate building a biblical worldview. All right, let's continue on. Research from the book comes from 7 original studies conducted as part of a collaborative effort between the Cultural Research Center at Arizona Christian University and the Family Research Council. The studies examine the ability of parents to intentionally and strategically raise spiritual champions among the nation's children. According to the book, many Christians feel so ill-equipped in their ability as parents that they have been swept up in a growing trend of outsourcing their responsibility. Okay, quick newsflash. Parents have been doing that for quite some time. And once again, I feel triggered by that because we don't want parents to outsource it. We want parents to do it themselves. We would love if parents would disciple their kids. We would love it if they taught them at home and taught them biblical truth and had Bible study with them. And many of us, as youth pastors, encourage that. We give resources. We send emails. We talk to parents. We have parent meetings. We are on the side of parents. We would love for them to do it. I would love to be out of a job, be honest with you. I would love it if parents, and if I was just the guy that showed up on Wednesday night and it was to do things, to be a launch pad, to do other things, whether it's missions or whether it's doing local outreaches or things that parents don't have time to do, or if my role was to just do parents, say, look, parents, you're teaching your kid at home, good, let's do a launch pad. Let's use this as an opportunity to gather as families and do family outreaches together. Let's reach our community together. And some of you are probably doing that already, and some churches need to catch up to that idea and say, you know what, maybe we need to switch a little bit. Maybe the church needs to rethink youth ministry in this regard. How about we quit treating it like a silo ministry and start treating it as an integrated process within the main body so that we can work together with families and that we are designed that way. And rather just looking at a calendar and throwing some things on there, we're asking the question, how can we do this together? How can the youth ministry and families and parents all work together so that these young people have a cord of three strands that is not easily broken, so that kids are getting what they need, and parents are getting what they need, and youth pastors are being used to their highest potential and not relegated to running a youth program that has almost no bearing on the larger body. Okay, based on that commentary, I'll just let you know this might be a longer than usual episode of the podcast. Let's go ahead and jump back into it. During the research, parents often share doubts about their own parenting ability, even expressing that although they are doing the best they can, they don't feel that they are very good parents. Barna, the director of research at the Cultural Research Center at Arizona Christian University, explains in a summary of the research highlighted in the book. But because they love their children and want them to have the best experiences and outcomes, parents look to find people who they believe can do the job in various dimensions of their child's lives. He wrote that parents look for the best teachers, coaches, and other experts who can give their children the training they believe they need to succeed. Now, I can say that this research echoes what Andrew Root said in The End of Youth Ministry, and he has a very good take on it. This came out, I think, 2 years ago, I want to say, and it's also a great book. I'll put a link down that in the show notes as well. But if you read that book, you'll get the early inklings that parents are making choices based on who is going to give their kids not only the most success, but who is going to make their children the happiest. As a result, parents have stepped back and handed over the worldview development process to experts who may or may not share their worldview and values. I think this also speaks to our need as youth pastors to up our game, to be more professional, to be more of an expert in the sense of, yes, we understand what spiritual formation is, we know what discipleship is, we know what it means to raise a family, we know what it means to teach kids. We can be the experts. We can be the trusted people. Part of the problem is that the memification of youth ministry has made youth ministry just sound dumb and stupid, and in some ways even untrustworthy in a sense because, well, all they do is play games, and all they do is this, and all they do is take trips, which is also unhelpful when it's people in our own congregation who say those things. Because I know, and you know, that we are doing our dead level best every week to teach the gospel and teach what it means to mature in faith. I am doing a series with my group right now called Baby Steps. How do we grow in our faith? How do we move from this phase to that phase? How do we put away childish things? And yet a lot of times the people in our church only see trips. They're only going to see the flashy stuff. They don't see what we're doing in those conversations at Taco Bell, and they don't see or listen to the conversations in the van rides, and they're not there for that. So I guess if we want more parents to look at the youth ministry and the youth pastor as being the expert, then the church has to start looking at the youth ministry as a respectable ministry in the church and the youth pastor as a respected staff member in the church who can help facilitate the needs of the families within this church. And I believe if that happens, then more and more parents will start trusting the youth program and the youth pastor because people are speaking well of it. People are saying that the youth pastor is not just somebody who plays games or does trips, but they're actually doing real ministry with parents, with students, with the community to build up and disciple young people to send them out into the world. The evangelical pollster added, "Our worldview is the decision-making filter that informs every decision we make, intellectual, moral, emotional, and spiritual. To have a biblical worldview," he says, "is to think like Jesus so that you can act like Jesus." Despite scriptures such as Deuteronomy 6, 1-9, Proverbs 2, 1-13, 29:17, 2 Corinthians 12:14, Ephesians 6:4, showing that parents are the ones who are charged with the primary responsibility of their children's spiritual development and discipleship, fewer than 10% of parents today have invested in any kind of spiritual development plan for their children. That's facts, but guess what, youth pastors? You know what we can do? Give them a plan going forward. That's one of our responsibility, is to help parents have a schedule, have a process, how to have discussions with their kids in the car, how to have a Bible study at home. You could literally create a stepping stone process for your parents by giving them information of how to do this at home. And once again, parents have to want to do this. as well. It's a partnership. It can't just be us shouting in the darkness that, hey, this is a really good thing you should do for your kids. It should be, hey, this is the model going forward. You're in charge. You're the parents. We love you. We appreciate you. We want to pray with you. We want to pray for your kids. And we'd love to be a small part of your child's process to knowing Christ, loving Christ, and serving Christ if you'll allow us to participate. Most of them, parents, are also found incapable of passing on biblical worldview to their children because most don't have one. Just 2% of parents with children under 13 were found to have a biblical worldview, while 94% had embraced syncretism, which is described as a hodgepodge mixture of competing and often conflicting worldviews. The book's data shows that just 22% of parents of preteens in America are born-again Christians, and only 8% of them hold a biblical worldview, while 58% of born-again Christian parents accept that they have the primary responsibility for the spiritual development of their children. 23% of them leave that job up to the churches. Research shows are increasingly unreliable sources of biblical worldview training, Barna stated, which I don't understand the context for that. I don't understand if he's saying that churches are unreliable for biblical worldview training, but we carry on. Most parents, even born-again parents, do not really think the spiritual component of their child's life is a big deal, at least not as big of a deal as doing well in school, sports, or relationships. And even if they are focused on building their child's biblical worldview, very few parents today, only 2%, possess biblical worldview themselves. Barna notes, they can't give what they don't have, and this creates a gaping spiritual vacuum as today's parents are raising their children. The research shows that just 36% of 13 and 14-year-olds believe that God exists and is the all-knowing, all-powerful creator of the universe, while only 1% of preteen children possess a biblical worldview. A majority of the youngest teens, 61%, either believe Jesus Christ sinned while he was on the earth or hold open the possibility that he did, Barna notes. Not even half, 45%, believe that God created the universe, and an overwhelming majority believe that there are no absolute objective truths. Barna encouraged parents who want to develop a biblical worldview in their children to first understand that this is their primary task in life, to raise their children to know, love, and serve God with all their heart, mind, and soul. No other life task is more important. He noted that because an individual's worldview is largely in place by the age of 13, parents should invest in discipling their children during their early years by making a life-defining commitment to Jesus and converting biblical belief into action, among other recommendations. Using this foundation, any child can build a purposeful and influential life that glorifies God, Barna said of the recommendations he makes in his book. Starting with these simple and basic biblical tenets empowers a child to construct a spiritual base that is scripturally solid, leading to life choices that are not only consistent and defensible, but also fulfilling and comforting. And that's the end of the article, which I think that if you read the article, and I'll put a link to the article down in the show notes as well, read it for yourself. But even if you buy the book and read through it, it gives you an idea maybe of where your teaching needs to go or where your programming needs to go. And yes, there are immediate needs within all our youth ministries of things that we need to address. But if this is the dilemma that we find ourselves in, that young people think Jesus sinned or hold open the possibility that he sinned, then we need to do a series on the deity of Christ and Jesus being God and why Jesus was a sinless lamb. And really, this research can, either make you feel like you're not doing enough, or you can see it as a way of saying, you know what, if those are the needs that are happening across the board, then maybe I can go ahead and help facilitate this among parents, among my students, and you can use this as a stepping stone to say, listen, parents, here's the research that I have found. Here's something that I have read, and here's some ways that you can use this to teach your kids that Jesus was sinless. And here's some ways you can learn for yourself, parents. There's some parents who don't understand, who don't read the Bible for themselves, and that's choices that they make. But maybe sharing the research with them and saying, listen, we want to help come alongside of you as a way to say, listen, we're here as a youth ministry, as a youth pastor, not to look down and determine that you are, not spiritually able to take care of your kids. No, we want to bolster your ability to take care of your kids. We believe you can do it, and we want to give you the stepping stone. So here's something on the deity of Christ, and here's something on the sinlessness of Christ, and here's something on, the creation of the world and how to talk about creation with your kids, or any number of things. So don't be discouraged by the research. Don't be discouraged by that. Use it in your ministry to say, here's a platform, here's a way to propel forward a plan for family ministry, and this is my way that I'm going to step up my game to be the expert. I'm going to be as good as that coach or that teacher. I'm going to present myself as somebody who has knowledge about what it means on spiritual formation and what the world looks like that their kids are going into, and help create resources or recommend books or create space through retreats or dinners or other ways for parents to be able to have conversations with their kids. So yeah, that was a lot, and as you can tell, I'm super passionate about it. I'm super passionate about how the youth ministry looks within the context of a church, and the responsibility of the youth pastor to present themselves as somebody who doesn't just play games or take trips, but they actually have a system in place for making disciples. And that is it for today, youth pastors. Thank you for joining me today. If you're brand new here to the podcast, thank you so much for being here. If you enjoyed what you heard today, be sure to go ahead and click that subscribe button, and that way you'll get these episodes into your feed every week. And if you're a regular, as always, I appreciate your time and your attention. And to answer the question, are we at fault for creating uncommitted Christians causing catastrophic decline in biblical worldview in America? I'm going to say no, not entirely, because we're the church, and because we have to work together. There'll be lots of people who want to point their fingers at youth ministries or children's ministries, but let me tell you something, we got to work together if we are going to see this turn around. And listen, if nobody's told you lately that you're doing a good job, let me tell you, you're doing a good job, and you're only going to get better. And we'll catch you guys in the next episode. Have a great week, everybody.